The moment they invited the quiet woman to sing was the exact moment they unknowingly challenged someone whose voice had once captivated the world's greatest concert halls. On a bright Saturday morning, the historic Jefferson Community Music Academy buzzed with excitement as families, students, and local musicians gathered for the annual open rehearsal. Warm sunlight poured through the tall windows of the rehearsal hall, reflecting softly across polished wooden floors and rows of neatly arranged chairs. A magnificent grand piano rested near the center of the room while dozens of young singers carefully reviewed sheet music, eager to impress their instructor during the final rehearsal before the evening showcase. Daniel Foster, a respected vocal teacher known for his demanding standards and confident personality, walked across the stage offering quick corrections and encouraging comments to his students. His reputation for discovering talented young performers attracted aspiring singers from across the state, and everyone inside the academy admired his ability to recognize potential almost instantly. That morning, however, his attention remained focused entirely on preparing his choir for a flawless performance, leaving little room to notice anyone outside his carefully planned schedule. As conversations filled the rehearsal hall, the front entrance quietly opened and an elderly woman stepped inside carrying a worn leather music folder that looked as though it had traveled through decades of cherished memories. Evelyn Harper wore a simple cream-colored cardigan over a modest navy blue dress, comfortable brown shoes, and a small silver pendant resting gently around her neck. Her neatly arranged white hair framed a peaceful smile that reflected kindness rather than confidence. She paused respectfully near the entrance, taking a quiet moment to admire the students rehearsing together before walking toward the visitor seating along the back wall. Several parents assumed she was waiting for a grandchild participating in the program, while a volunteer greeted her warmly and offered a printed schedule. Evelyn thanked the volunteer with genuine appreciation and quietly accepted a seat where she could observe without disturbing anyone. She placed her weathered music folder carefully upon her lap and listened with complete attention as the choir rehearsed. Every note seemed to bring a gentle smile to her face, not because the performance was perfect, but because she clearly loved music itself. Olivia Bennett, one of the youngest choir members, happened to notice the elderly visitor listening with remarkable concentration. There was something unusual about the calm expression in Evelyn's eyes whenever the students attempted a difficult harmony. Instead of reacting like an ordinary audience member, she seemed to anticipate every phrase before it arrived. Olivia quietly wondered whether the gentlewoman might once have sung herself, although nothing about Evelyn's modest appearance suggested an extraordinary musical background. Daniel glanced briefly toward the visitor section while preparing the next exercise but quickly returned his attention to the students. To him, Evelyn appeared to be nothing more than another kind grandmother enjoying a community rehearsal. He had no reason to think otherwise. The rehearsal continued beneath the warm afternoon light while voices echoed through the spacious hall, completely unaware that among the silent visitors sat a woman whose remarkable gift had once filled some of the most celebrated opera stages in the world. She neither introduced herself nor sought recognition. She simply listened with quiet gratitude, patiently allowing the music to speak long before anyone realized the greatest voice in the room belonged to the woman no one had bothered to notice. The rehearsal continued with steady determination as Daniel Foster guided the choir through increasingly difficult vocal exercises, encouraging every singer to strengthen technique, breath control, and confidence. Several students struggled with the demanding passages, causing Daniel to pause the rehearsal repeatedly while offering detailed instructions. Although his comments remained professional, his competitive nature often pushed students beyond their comfort zones because he believed remarkable performances required extraordinary discipline. Evelyn Harper quietly watched every exercise from the visitor seating with calm appreciation, occasionally smiling whenever a student improved after receiving guidance. Her gentle expression reflected encouragement rather than judgment, and she applauded softly whenever the choir completed a challenging section together. Olivia Bennett noticed the elderly visitor again and quietly wondered why someone who appeared to understand every musical detail had never spoken or offered any advice. During a short break, Daniel stepped away from the piano and looked across the rehearsal hall searching for a way to energize the students before the next session. His eyes settled upon Evelyn sitting peacefully with the worn leather music folder resting upon her lap. With a friendly smile and the confidence of someone certain he understood the situation, he decided to create a light-hearted moment that might relax everyone before returning to serious rehearsal. Walking toward the visitor section, he warmly welcomed Evelyn and thanked her for supporting the academy. He then jokingly asked whether she had ever enjoyed singing when she was younger. Evelyn answered honestly that music had always been an important part of her life. The simple response brought quiet smiles from several students, while Daniel continued the conversation with cheerful confidence. Pointing toward the grand piano at the center of the room, he remarked that perhaps today's rehearsal deserved one unexpected guest performance. The students laughed politely, assuming their teacher intended nothing more than harmless entertainment. Daniel explained that the choir had been preparing one of the most technically demanding opera arias in the repertoire and playfully suggested that perhaps their kind visitor might enjoy trying a few measures herself. Gentle laughter echoed throughout the hall as several students exchanged amused glances. No one expected the invitation to become anything more than a pleasant moment before rehearsal resumed. Evelyn never appeared embarrassed by the attention. She simply looked toward the piano with quiet composure before asking one respectful question. She wondered whether she might sing the complete opening passage if she accepted the invitation. Daniel smiled broadly, believing the confidence came from good humor rather than experience. He assured her that she could certainly try as much of the aria as she wished because everyone appreciated enthusiasm. Olivia sensed something different. The calm certainty in Evelyn's voice did not sound playful or uncertain. It sounded familiar, as though the music already belonged to her long before anyone mentioned it. Grace Mitchell, the academy principal, happened to enter the rehearsal hall just as the unexpected invitation unfolded. Curious about the growing attention surrounding the visitor, she quietly remained near the doorway to observe. Evelyn slowly rose from her chair, gently lifted the worn leather music folder into her hands, and walked toward the grand piano with graceful, unhurried steps. Every movement reflected quiet dignity rather than nervousness. The students continued smiling politely, believing they were about to witness an ordinary grandmother bravely attempting an impossible opera solo. Danielle stepped aside with welcoming confidence and invited everyone to encourage their unexpected volunteer with warm applause. The rehearsal hall filled with cheerful clapping as Evelyn reached the center of the room, placed her weathered music folder upon the piano, lifted her eyes toward the spacious ceiling, and prepared to sing while every person watching remained completely unaware that the first note would forever change the way they remembered that ordinary Saturday afternoon. The cheerful applause slowly faded as Evelyn Harper arrived beside the grand piano with the same calm expression she had worn since entering the academy. She placed her weathered leather music folder gently upon the polished instrument before quietly smoothing one corner of the worn cover with remarkable familiarity. The simple gesture passed unnoticed by nearly everyone watching, yet it reflected years of careful respect for music rather than nervousness about performing. Daniel Foster smiled encouragingly and stepped away from the piano bench, confident that the unexpected moment would bring a few light-hearted laughs before rehearsal returned to normal. Several choir students exchanged friendly smiles while whispering quietly among themselves. Most believed the elderly visitor would sing only a few uncertain notes before politely laughing along with everyone else. Olivia Bennet, however, could not take her eyes away from Evelyn. There was something unusual about the way she stood before the piano. Her shoulders remained relaxed, her breathing became slow and measured, and her eyes carried the peaceful focus of someone entering a familiar place rather than facing an intimidating challenge. Grace Mitchell remained near the doorway with growing curiosity, sensing that the atmosphere inside the rehearsal hall had quietly begun to change. Daniel sat at the grand piano and gently played the opening accompaniment to the demanding opera aria. The rich chords echoed through the spacious rehearsal room before settling into complete silence. Evelyn closed her eyes for only a brief moment, allowing one slow breath to fill her lungs with effortless control. Then she opened her eyes, lifted her head slightly toward the ceiling, and released the very first note. Time itself seemed to stop. The opening phrase floated through the rehearsal hall with astonishing clarity, warmth, and effortless power. It was not simply beautiful. It possessed remarkable precision, emotional depth, and complete technical mastery that no one expected from the quiet visitor standing beside the piano. Daniel's hands immediately froze above the keyboard for a fraction of a second before instinctively continuing the accompaniment. His confident smile disappeared as surprise slowly spread across his face. Every student lowered their sheet music almost at the same moment. Conversations ended instantly. Even the soft sounds from the hallway outside seemed to disappear beneath the extraordinary voice filling the academy. Evelyn never appeared to perform for attention. Her expression remained peaceful while every phrase flowed naturally into the next with flawless breath control and elegant musical expression. Each note carried remarkable richness without ever becoming forced, allowing the soaring melody to fill every corner of the rehearsal hall with breathtaking beauty. Olivia stared in complete amazement, unable to believe that the gentle woman sitting quietly among the visitors only moments earlier possessed such extraordinary ability. Grace slowly placed one hand against the nearby doorway, overwhelmed by the realization that something truly unforgettable was unfolding before her eyes. Daniel continued accompanying the aria almost automatically, though his attention had shifted entirely from the piano to Evelyn herself. Years of teaching had allowed him to recognize exceptional talent within seconds, yet nothing had prepared him for what he was hearing now. This was not the voice of an enthusiastic amateur. This was the voice of someone whose entire life had been devoted to mastering one of the most demanding forms of music in the world. As the aria continued rising with effortless elegance, every person inside the rehearsal hall remained completely still, listening with growing wonder while the ordinary Saturday rehearsal quietly transformed into a moment that none of them would ever forget. Without announcing her past, without correcting anyone's assumptions, and without asking for recognition, Evelyn allowed her voice alone to reveal a truth more powerful than any introduction ever could. The opening phrase continued rising through the rehearsal hall with remarkable elegance, carrying a richness and effortless control that seemed to transform the familiar room into the stage of a world-renowned opera house. Evelyn Harper remained perfectly composed, her posture graceful and relaxed while every note flowed naturally from one beautiful phrase into the next. She displayed no dramatic gestures, no attempt to impress, and no trace of nervousness. Her attention remained devoted entirely to the music itself, allowing the aria to unfold with breathtaking sincerity. Daniel Foster continued accompanying her at the piano, but his confidence had quietly disappeared. Years of teaching gifted singers had trained his ears to recognize extraordinary technique within seconds, and everything he heard confirmed the impossible truth unfolding before him. The woman he had casually invited to entertain the choir possessed flawless breath control, extraordinary resonance, remarkable diction, and emotional expression that could only belong to someone who had spent an entire lifetime mastering opera. His fingers continued moving across the piano keys almost automatically while his eyes remained fixed upon Evelyn in complete disbelief. Every student stood frozen. Sheet music slowly lowered toward the floor as no one wished to miss a single note. Olivia Bennet felt a quiet chill as the soaring melody filled every corner of the rehearsal hall. She had listened to countless professional recordings while studying classical singing, yet hearing such extraordinary artistry only a few feet away felt almost unbelievable. Grace Mitchell slowly stepped farther into the room without making a sound. Even she forgot entirely about the administrative meeting she had intended to attend only minutes earlier. The Academy had welcomed many talented performers over the years, but never had she witnessed such astonishing musical beauty appear so unexpectedly. Sunlight continued pouring through the tall rehearsal hall windows, illuminating tiny particles floating peacefully through the air while Evelyn's magnificent voice rose effortlessly above the gentle piano accompaniment. Time itself seemed to lose meaning. No one checked a telephone. No one whispered. Even the youngest choir members who normally struggled to remain still sat completely motionless beneath the spell of the unforgettable performance. The emotional depth within Evelyn's interpretation reached far beyond remarkable technique. Every phrase carried warmth, wisdom, and quiet humanity that touched every listener in a deeply personal way. Daniel gradually realized that he was no longer accompanying a guest attempting an opera aria. He was accompanying an artist whose understanding of music far exceeded anything he had imagined. The realization humbled him with every passing measure. Evelyn reached one of the most demanding passages of the aria and delivered it with effortless brilliance. The soaring high notes filled the spacious rehearsal hall without strain, remaining clear, radiant, and beautifully controlled from beginning to end. Several parents quietly lifted their hands to cover astonished smiles while others felt unexpected tears gathering in their eyes. The extraordinary voice seemed capable of awakening memories and emotions that words alone could never express. Olivia glanced toward Daniel and immediately noticed the complete transformation in his expression. The confident teacher who moments earlier expected harmless entertainment now watched with profound admiration and growing humility. Grace slowly clasped her hands together, recognizing that the academy was witnessing one of those rare moments that students would continue talking about for decades. Yet throughout the breathtaking performance, Evelyn Harper remained exactly as she had been when she quietly entered the building earlier that afternoon. She sought no applause, offered no explanation, and made no effort to reveal who she truly was. She simply allowed every beautiful note to speak with honesty, proving that genuine greatness never needs to introduce itself because authentic excellence always finds its own unforgettable voice. The magnificent aria continued unfolding with extraordinary grace until every beautiful phrase seemed to lift the entire rehearsal hall into complete silence. Evelyn Harper stood perfectly still beneath the warm afternoon light, allowing the music to carry its own emotion without unnecessary movement or theatrical display. Her remarkable voice remained effortlessly balanced from the gentlest passages to the soaring climactic notes, filling the spacious academy with a richness and clarity that left every listener completely captivated. Daniel Foster continued playing the accompaniment with growing humility. He had spent years teaching advanced vocal technique and preparing talented students for competitions, yet never before had he found himself accompanying someone whose artistry reached such an extraordinary level. Every musical decision Evelyn made reflected decades of experience, remarkable discipline, and deep emotional understanding. She shaped every phrase naturally, never rushing a single moment, allowing silence between the notes to become just as meaningful as the music itself. Olivia Bennet listened with wide eyes, hardly remembering to breathe. She had dreamed of becoming a professional singer one day, but standing only a few feet away from such extraordinary artistry completely changed her understanding of what true mastery sounded like. She quietly realized that great performers never needed dramatic gestures because genuine excellence carried its own quiet confidence. Grace Mitchell slowly walked farther into the rehearsal hall until she stood beside several parents who remained completely motionless. No one reached for a telephone. No one whispered. Every person present seemed unwilling to disturb the unforgettable moment unfolding before them. Even the youngest children, who normally struggled to remain still during long rehearsals, watched Evelyn with complete attention as though instinctively recognizing that they were witnessing something exceptionally rare. The aria approached its emotional climax, demanding remarkable vocal control across an extended series of soaring phrases that many accomplished singers found intimidating. Evelyn met every challenge with effortless elegance. Her breath remained perfectly supported, every note radiant and beautifully centered, while the final sustained passages floated through the academy with breathtaking warmth. Sunlight reflected softly across the polished grand piano, surrounding the performance with a peaceful glow that made the rehearsal hall feel almost timeless. Daniel looked toward Evelyn while continuing the accompaniment, no longer seeing an elderly visitor invited to participate in a rehearsal. He saw an extraordinary artist whose quiet dignity matched the beauty of her remarkable voice. The realization humbled him more deeply with every measure. As the final phrase gently resolved into silence, Evelyn lowered her eyes and allowed the last note to disappear naturally without rushing toward applause. For several long moments, no one moved. The silence itself became part of the performance, filled with admiration too profound for immediate words. Then one student slowly stood to applaud. Another followed. Within seconds the entire rehearsal hall rose together, filling the academy with heartfelt applause that echoed from wall to wall. The standing ovation continued without interruption while Evelyn responded only with a gentle smile and a gracious nod of appreciation. She placed one hand lightly upon the grand piano as though thanking an old friend before quietly stepping back from the instrument. Daniel remained seated at the piano, unable to hide the emotion in his expression. Every assumption he had made only minutes earlier had disappeared completely. Yet the greatest surprise had not been the astonishing beauty of Evelyn's voice. It had been the remarkable humility with which she shared a gift capable of moving every heart in the room without ever mentioning who she truly was. While the applause continued growing louder, Olivia quietly wondered how someone with such extraordinary ability could remain completely unknown to everyone inside the academy. The answer to that remarkable question was waiting quietly inside the worn leather music folder resting beside the piano, where a lifetime of forgotten greatness had remained hidden until this unforgettable afternoon. The standing ovation continued filling the rehearsal hall with heartfelt admiration while Evelyn Harper quietly accepted the applause with the same gentle smile she had worn from the beginning. She neither bowed dramatically nor attempted to explain the extraordinary performance everyone had just witnessed. Instead, she simply thanked the students with a gracious nod before reaching calmly for the worn leather music folder resting beside the grand piano. Daniel Foster slowly rose from the piano bench, still unable to fully understand how someone with such breathtaking artistry had entered the academy unnoticed. His years of professional experience told him with absolute certainty that voices of this caliber did not simply appear by chance. Grace Mitchell approached Evelyn to offer sincere appreciation, but before she could speak, Olivia Bennet found herself staring at the weathered music folder that had slipped slightly open as Evelyn gently lifted it from the piano. A small collection of aged concert programs and carefully preserved newspaper clippings had become visible inside. Curiosity overcame hesitation. Olivia politely asked whether she might help gather one folded page that had quietly fallen to the floor. Evelyn smiled warmly and thanked her. As Olivia picked up the yellowed program, her eyes widened. Printed across the front was a photograph of a much younger Evelyn standing beneath the brilliant lights of a famous opera house wearing an elegant concert gown. Across the top appeared the words International Opera Gala. Olivia quietly looked at another preserved article resting inside the folder. The headline praised Evelyn Harper as one of America's most celebrated dramatic sopranos whose performances had earned standing ovations across New York, Chicago, Milan, Vienna, and London. Her heart began racing as she quickly carried the articles toward Grace Mitchell. Grace carefully examined the aging newspaper clippings one after another, each revealing another remarkable chapter of Evelyn's forgotten career. Prestigious music awards, acclaimed recordings, international performances, and glowing reviews from respected critics painted the portrait of an artist whose voice had once captivated audiences throughout the world. Grace immediately turned toward Daniel with astonishment written across her face. Without saying a word, she handed him the collection of articles. Daniel slowly read each page while complete disbelief spread across his expression. Every assumption he had made that afternoon quietly collapsed beneath the undeniable truth resting in his hands. The quiet elderly visitor he had invited to sing for amusement had once been one of the most admired opera performers of her generation. Yet not once had Evelyn mentioned her extraordinary accomplishments. She had accepted every misunderstanding with remarkable patience, allowing only her voice to reveal who she truly was. The rehearsal hall gradually became silent again as several students noticed the old newspaper clippings passing carefully from hand to hand. Grace gently explained to the choir that they had just listened to an internationally celebrated opera legend whose remarkable career had inspired generations of musicians before she quietly stepped away from public life many years earlier to care for her family. A wave of astonishment spread through the room. Every student looked toward Evelyn with even greater admiration than before. Daniel lowered the articles slowly, unable to hide the emotion filling his eyes. He realized that true greatness had been sitting quietly among the visitors from the very beginning while everyone, including himself, had seen only an ordinary elderly woman carrying an old music folder. Evelyn remained exactly the same gentle person she had been all afternoon, offering kind smiles to the students while never seeking recognition for a lifetime of extraordinary achievement. In that quiet moment, every person inside the academy understood that the greatest artists often carry their remarkable stories with humility, allowing character to speak long before reputation ever needs to say a single word. Complete silence settled across the rehearsal hall as every student slowly absorbed the remarkable truth revealed through the faded newspaper articles and carefully preserved concert programs. The elderly woman standing quietly beside the grand piano was not simply a gifted visitor who happened to sing beautifully. She was an internationally celebrated opera artist whose voice had once filled the greatest concert halls in the world. Yet she had entered the academy carrying nothing more than an old leather music folder and a warm smile, never mentioning a single accomplishment from her extraordinary past. Daniel Foster looked toward Evelyn Harper with sincere humility. Only minutes earlier he had invited her to perform, believing it would create a harmless and entertaining moment for his students. Now he understood that he had unknowingly asked one of the finest artists of her generation to demonstrate the very music she had spent decades mastering. The realization weighed heavily upon him, not because Evelyn had corrected him, but because she never had. She allowed every assumption to exist until the music itself quietly revealed the truth. Daniel slowly walked toward Evelyn while every person in the rehearsal hall watched with complete attention. His confident posture softened as he stopped beside her and spoke with genuine honesty. He admitted before the entire choir that he had judged her too quickly. He explained that he had seen only a quiet elderly visitor instead of recognizing that remarkable experience and extraordinary talent often arrive without seeking attention. His apology filled the room with thoughtful silence because every student recognized the courage required to acknowledge a mistake so openly. Evelyn listened peacefully without interrupting. When Daniel finished speaking, she smiled gently and thanked him for his kind words. She explained that throughout her life she had discovered something far more valuable than applause. People often make quick assumptions because appearances reveal only a small part of someone's story. What truly matters is whether those assumptions are replaced with understanding when the opportunity arrives. Her calm voice carried the same warmth and dignity that had filled the rehearsal hall moments earlier through music alone. Olivia Bennet felt deeply moved by the conversation unfolding before her eyes. She realized that the greatest lesson of the afternoon had not come from remarkable vocal technique or international success. It came from witnessing extraordinary humility stand beside sincere accountability without bitterness or pride. Grace Mitchell thanked Evelyn for giving every student a memory that would shape not only their musical education but also their character for years to come. One by one, the choir members quietly approached Evelyn, expressing admiration and gratitude for allowing them to hear such an unforgettable performance. Evelyn greeted every student with patience and kindness, offering encouraging words that focused not upon fame but upon dedication, discipline, and love for music. Daniel watched each conversation with growing respect, recognizing that true greatness extended far beyond exceptional ability. It appeared equally through generosity, patience, and quiet grace. Before returning to her seat, Evelyn gently closed the worn leather music folder and held it carefully against her heart. She looked across the rehearsal hall filled with young singers whose understanding of excellence had changed forever. No dramatic speech followed. No celebration interrupted the peaceful atmosphere. Instead, the Academy remained wrapped in a profound stillness created by the realization that genuine artistry never demands recognition because authentic greatness possesses the quiet confidence to let character and talent speak together. As the afternoon sunlight continued shining through the tall windows, everyone present understood that they had witnessed far more than an extraordinary opera performance. They had witnessed dignity answering misunderstanding with kindness, leaving behind a lesson far more enduring than applause alone. The afternoon rehearsal slowly returned to a peaceful silence as the students gathered around Evelyn Harper with genuine admiration replacing every earlier assumption. The grand piano remained at the center of the rehearsal hall, its polished surface reflecting the warm sunlight that continued streaming through the tall windows. Yet the instrument no longer seemed to be the true center of attention. Every heart inside the Academy had shifted toward the quiet woman whose extraordinary voice had reminded everyone that greatness often arrives without introduction. Daniel Foster remained standing beside Evelyn, still reflecting upon the lesson he had unexpectedly learned. His years as a respected teacher had taught him countless musical techniques, but this single afternoon had taught him something even more valuable. Looking toward the choir, he admitted that every musician must first learn to respect people before evaluating talent. Technical knowledge alone could never replace humility. The students listened carefully, recognizing that their teacher's words carried a sincerity deeper than any ordinary classroom instruction. Evelyn smiled warmly and gently thanked Daniel for his honesty. She explained that every person continues learning throughout life, regardless of age or experience. She shared that during her own international career she had once met remarkable artists whose greatest strength was never their extraordinary voices but their ability to encourage young performers with kindness and patience. Those memories had shaped the way she chose to live long after the applause from great concert halls had faded into the past. Olivia Bennet quietly asked Evelyn what had inspired her to leave such an extraordinary career behind. The question filled the rehearsal hall with thoughtful silence. Evelyn answered softly that there are seasons in every life. When her husband became seriously ill many years earlier, caring for the person she loved became more important than standing beneath bright stage lights. She never considered the decision a sacrifice because love and family had always mattered more than fame. Her answer touched every listener more deeply than the remarkable performance itself. Grace Mitchell thanked Evelyn for sharing such personal wisdom and explained that every student present had received an education extending far beyond music. She announced that the Academy would preserve this unforgettable afternoon as part of its history, not because an internationally celebrated opera artist had unexpectedly visited the school, but because everyone had witnessed extraordinary humility expressed through both music and character. The choir members quietly gathered around Evelyn, asking thoughtful questions about breathing techniques, stage confidence, and lifelong dedication to music. Evelyn answered each question with patience, encouraging every student to practice consistently while remembering that beautiful singing always begins with genuine emotion rather than the desire for recognition. Daniel watched every conversation with deep respect. The woman he had mistakenly viewed as an ordinary visitor now continued teaching without claiming authority or expecting admiration. Her wisdom flowed as naturally as her remarkable voice. As the rehearsal drew toward its conclusion, Evelyn gently picked up the weathered leather music folder and thanked everyone for allowing her to share music once again. She explained that every opportunity to encourage young musicians remained a precious gift. Before leaving, she invited the choir to sing one final simple hymn together. There were no difficult opera passages this time, only a beautiful melody celebrating hope, gratitude, and unity. Students, parents, teachers, and visitors joined their voices together while Evelyn quietly sang among them rather than above them. In that peaceful moment, no one could distinguish the internationally celebrated opera legend from the beginner standing beside her. She had intentionally become part of the choir instead of its star, proving once again that genuine greatness shines brightest when it quietly helps others discover their own voices. As the final harmony faded into the warm afternoon light, every person present understood that the most unforgettable lesson of the day had never been about extraordinary talent alone. It had always been about humility, kindness, and the quiet dignity that transforms remarkable ability into lasting inspiration. As the final harmony gently disappeared into the peaceful afternoon air, the rehearsal hall remained wrapped in a silence unlike any the Academy had ever experienced. No one hurried toward the exit. No one reached for a telephone or gathered belongings in a rush. Students, teachers, parents, and visitors simply stood together for one quiet moment, allowing everything they had witnessed to settle within their hearts. Evelyn Harper adjusted the strap of her worn leather music folder and thanked everyone with the same gentle smile that had greeted the Academy when she first arrived. There was no desire for another performance, no expectation of recognition, and no interest in speaking about the remarkable career that had once carried her voice across the world's greatest opera stages. She believed the music had already said everything that needed to be said. Daniel Foster walked beside her toward the front entrance, holding the heavy wooden door open with sincere respect. Before Evelyn stepped outside, he thanked her once again for changing far more than a single rehearsal. He admitted that the experience had transformed the way he intended to teach every future student. From that day forward, he promised never to measure anyone by appearance, age, clothing, or first impressions before discovering who they truly were. Evelyn nodded warmly and answered that every teacher possesses the extraordinary opportunity to shape not only talented musicians but also compassionate human beings. She explained that beautiful voices eventually grow quiet, concert halls eventually become memories, and applause eventually fades, but kindness shown to another person has the remarkable ability to continue echoing throughout an entire lifetime. Olivia Bennet quietly approached Evelyn carrying a small notebook and politely asked whether she might have a simple autograph. Evelyn smiled, signed only her name, and beneath it wrote one brief sentence. "Sing with your heart before you sing with your voice." Olivia read the words carefully, knowing they would remain far more valuable than any famous signature. Grace Mitchell watched the exchange with quiet gratitude, recognizing that the greatest gift Evelyn had given the Academy could never be displayed inside a trophy case or framed upon a wall. She had reminded every person present that genuine excellence and genuine humility belong together. Outside, warm afternoon sunlight stretched across the Academy courtyard as Evelyn slowly walked toward her modest car. She paused only once to listen as faint choir voices drifted through an open rehearsal window. Daniel had already resumed practice, but something had quietly changed. The students no longer sang merely to impress their instructor. They sang with greater patience, greater unity, and greater respect for one another. Evelyn smiled softly before continuing toward her car, content that the afternoon had accomplished something far more meaningful than unexpected admiration. In the months that followed, new students entering Jefferson Community Music Academy often heard older choir members tell the story of the quiet visitor carrying an old leather music folder who unexpectedly revealed one of the greatest opera voices they had ever heard. Yet those who had truly been present always corrected one important detail. They explained that the unforgettable lesson had never been about discovering a famous singer in disguise. It had been about discovering that extraordinary people often choose ordinary lives, allowing character to shine more brightly than reputation. Long after the music faded and the applause became only memory, one truth continued living inside every heart touched by that remarkable afternoon. Greatness never announces its arrival. It quietly enters the room with kindness, speaks through excellence, and leaves behind a lesson that echoes far longer than even the most beautiful song.